Here's the thing, over 950 brake horsepower and capable of more than 200 miles an hour, running on 15-inch wheels with a body made of recycled tin cans. Oh, and this one was driven by some bloke called Jeff Gordon.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gordon.
We don't often see these sort of things in Englandshire, for this is a NASCAR car, and today we're going to talk about it. My name is John, welcome to Auto Shenanigans. Why not consider subscribing? The National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, or NASCAR, is quintessentially American, with its origins firmly rooted in the 1920s during the Prohibition era, where throughout America the sale and production of beer and other alcoholic beverages were banned. The idea, mostly conjured up by religious radicalists, was that no alcohol would reduce crime, improve health and solve all of the social and societal problems. What it actually did was create a huge illegal market and a surge in organised crime, where local entrepreneur types took it on themselves to manufacture and distribute their own alcoholic beverage known as moonshine. In the traditional sense, moonshine is a clear, unaged whiskey made with barley mash, originating in Scotland and Ireland, with the first recorded use of the word moonshine occurring in England. So, by all accounts, moonshine is very much not American, but they certainly made it famous during the Prohibition era, where the term was used to describe any sort of illicit spirit-based beverage, and indeed they made their own version using corn or maize mash instead of barley. The name moonshine was appropriate because it said that it had to be distilled overnight, usually under moonlight, so as to avoid detection and arrest, and no place did it better than Wilkes County in North Carolina, quickly dubbed the moonshine capital. That's all very well, but how does one distribute one's illicit beverages during a time when it's completely illegal to do so? Well, one might like to try a car. Not this one, it hasn't got a boot, but without the cars of the Prohibition era, we wouldn't be looking at this today. Because back then, there were certain gentlemen who made a living from transporting moonshine from the places where it was made to the various towns and cities across each state, where it could then be sold to willing buyers, of which there was a lot. There were also a lot of police officers and the feds trying to shut down these operations, but to outrun the law enforcement, the delivery drivers started to modify their cars in any way possible to ensure that they had the upper hand, and it seemed to work. These drivers would then start to meet up outside of working hours to compare and contrast their self-modified motor vehicles, usually by hooning them around in a massive circle in a large field, and this was the start of NASCAR, although at the time they didn't know it. Whilst the Prohibition would come to an end in 1933, the moonshine drivers would remain employed by evading the tax enforcement officers rather than the law, and this led to further improvements being made to their vehicles in order to do so. By the mid-1940s, they got pretty good at it and had started to arrange unofficial races between themselves for bragging rights at a newly opened North Wilkesboro Speedway in Wilkes County, which at the time was nothing more than a simple oval dirt track. The first official race at the Speedway was organised by William France, aka Big Bill, in 1947. It was a 30-lap stock car race in which ex-moonshine delivery driver Fonty Flock of Alabama took first place in front of 10,000 spectators, and off the back of that, a year later, in 1948, Big Bill would set up the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, and thus NASCAR was born, and it's shown no signs of slowing down ever since. Quality pun. And eventually we ended up with this. But what is this? This is a 2011 Chevrolet Impala, although, as we can see, it has very little in common with the family sedan. Built by Hendrick Motorsport in North Carolina, it's essentially a tubular frame chassis with an approximation of a Chevrolet Impala for bodywork, which I thought would be some sort of cheap fiberglass, but no. It's far more impressive. The bodywork is made of... Oh, hello. It's far more impressive. The bodywork is made of tin, but what's amazing is that the panels are not only massive, the car is 5.5 metres long after all, but it's all hand-beaten bodywork, so someone has spent countless hours bending and shaping the metal by hand, and when you consider the sheer size of the car, to get everything so perfectly straight and pristine is the work of witches. The car was built to compete in the NASCAR Cup Series, the highest level within the sport, and it was a bit of a partnership between Hendrick Motorsport and the AARP, a charity that works towards ending food poverty. To bring attention to the situation, they launched a campaign known as Drive to End Hunger, and it was basically a case of go racing and raise awareness for a good cause. You're not fucking hungry, are you, fat... Anyway... Now, if you're going to go racing in NASCAR, you'll be wanting a driver, and unbeknown to me at the time of putting this video together, our 2011 Impala was driven by none other than NASCAR legend Jeff Gordon.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gordon.
This guy has won over 95 races since the early 1990s when his NASCAR career began. He's got a motorway or highway named after him, and some of you may recognise the name and the car from a small video game called Gran Turismo 5. And 6. You don't get included in the greatest racing game if you aren't a somebody. Which is why I perhaps feel slightly honoured to get a look at such a wonderful motor vehicle. To translate the situation into English, this is much like taking a look at one of Lewis Hamilton's F1 winning cars. It's not the sort of thing you get access to all of that often, so thank you very much to Road to Race and all of those involved. Now, should we take a look at the engine? Come on. And what an engine! It's a Hendrick Motorsport R07, an engine with General Motors underpinnings, so it's a Vauxhall then. It's a 5.8 litre V8 that can rev up to 10,000 RPM to generate over 950 brake horsepower, although to meet race regulations it's usually dialed back a bit to only 850 horsepower with a 9,700 RPM limit. With the car weighing around 1,540 kilograms, you're looking at just over 550 horsepower per tonne, yet despite the immense power, when you examine the engine, you might be forgiven for thinking it's all a bit simple. The engine's DNA stems from the 1950s using a pushrod design with a massive carburettor. Ask your dad. It's connected to a 4-speed manual gearbox which together drive the wheels to well over 200 miles an hour. And nobody cares because let's fire it up and take a listen. Let's be honest, it's the only reason we're here because we're all children. Yep.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gordon.
The car is actually one of the last to feature a carburettor. It was decided to modernise things a bit, and as of 2012, electronic fuel injection has been introduced to NASCAR. So we could say that this car marks the end of the traditional NASCAR era that's been following a similar recipe since its conception, but with many refinements along the way, leading to a bizarre but interesting fact about modern NASCAR cars. It's wonky. Everything on the car has been optimised for turning left on an oval racetrack. In race configuration, you can't really drive it straight without having to make constant corrections to your steering. Furthermore, the wheelbase is different on each side of the car. It's asymmetrical, shorter on the inside and longer on the outside, and the suspension sits higher on one side as well, all to set the car up perfectly for driving on a banked oval. So it's an 850 brake horsepower V8 monster where the wheels aren't even straight. Not that it matters. The steering is set up in a way that results in almost no possible way to turn right, because you never need to make such a turn in NASCAR. However, I'm told it's a pain in the arse if you want to move it around your workshop yard, but either way, the thought and detail put into these cars is quite mind-boggling. Have you ever seen the RON number at the petrol pumps? Normal UK fuel is 95 RON and the special stuff is 99 RON. This car uses 115 RON leaded fuel. Leaded. That's basically rocket fuel with added cancer, which you can buy in the UK. It's about £6 a litre, and there's probably a few forms to fill out with the Environmental Protection Services before you drive it anywhere, which might be a bit of a struggle because it meets absolutely no UK race regulations, no track regulations, no road regulations. In fact, it meets no regulations whatsoever, which is exactly what you want. And I think within these cars, the spirit of the 1920s moonshine runners lives on. You and your namby-pamby computerized Formula Series. We got
the roughest, toughest, ruthless, shootless
V8s, which, based on those fuel stats, are running on the craziest moonshine in order to do over 200 miles an hour in every race. Because America! Yeah! Cue the national anthem, military fly-past, marching band and cheerleader squad, and thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Take care, bye-bye. And eventually we ended up with this. But what is the and eventually just need to smoke 20 more cigarettes. This, a 2011 Chevrolet Impala, which, as you can see, I can't talk, that's the issue. If I learnt to do that, this would be better. Essentially a tubular frame essentially a tubular frame chassis. fiberglass, but no. That one, cool. It was good, but the wind probably ruined that.